So let's say he paid $1 million for the property. His combined savings, money that he won't have to pay the state or the IRS in taxes, will be $530,000.
Um, Once again, we're on with my favorite and my personal tax experts, James Harnsberger and Alan Divinagracia, who personally do my taxes and have been really great at helping people out in understanding what you can deduct on your taxes and how to put your tax returns to work for you in earning even more money on your ADU.
I believe you're referring to the strategy of using a cost segregation study.
Yep.
All right.
How does that work? What does that even mean?
Component depreciation said when you bought a house, you had land and you had a building on the land, and you could deduct the building. And before component depreciation, the land got zero and the building got 25 years, whatever it was. Component depreciation then said, well, wait a minute. The building is made up of parts. You have flooring material and you have window coverings, you have HVAC, you have a roof, you have drywall, you have cabinets and fixtures, you have toilets and sinks. All of those components fall into different asset groups because they don't last 25 years. And so it got changed where you could use component depreciation, and certain property fell into a 5 year life. Some property fell into a 7 year life. And then some property fell into a 15-year life. And the residual, whatever was left over, went to the building, the actual structure. On the land, you can't deduct and depreciate land, but you can deduct and depreciate improvements on the land, trees, shrubs, irrigation, sprinklers, sidewalks, driveways, fences, all of the stuff that you do to decorate the landscaping. All of that is deductible. Those are components pertinent to the land. So land is land X, the improvements on the land. And those improvements have a shelf life for tax purposes of 15 years. So all of a sudden, you get to front load a huge amount of depreciation on the front end of the property. The client bought the property, did the ADU, did all of the goodies, and basically, the short story, in the first 5 years of owning the property, the tax saving that client will save will be 53% of what he paid for the property. So let's say he paid $1 million for the property. His combined savings, money that he won't have to pay the state or the IRS in taxes, will be $530,000.
Is that for 1 year only, or can it be
That's
carried?
for the first 5 years.
Whoa, whoa.
And he gets 30% of that in the first year under the new laws. It's called the One Big Beautiful Bill, the OBBB, right? And if it's structured correctly and you have the right study and you have the right tax attribution study that tells you how it's going to be done in your particular situation, then you're going to have a very good day, because what you thought was $1 million property actually only cost you $470,000 because you're not going to pay $530,000 in tax.
So, how does this work for clients looking to purchase a house? And is this can they live in the house or is it investment properties only?
So that's a little bit of a compound. If you buy a property and there's ever a possibility that on any chance in the future that you would ever convert the property in part or in whole to a rental, I always advise that you should get a cost segregation study. There is just a whole host of reasons, particularly if it's a high valued asset for estate tax purposes, because that goes to the value of estate, and there's some tricky little things you want to be aware of there. On any commercial property or any residential rental property, you absolutely want to do this. And there's a little wrinkle in the ADU that people are not aware of. If you were living in the house and then you create an ADU that's attached or detached, you've created a different tax composition. And so some of the general rules don't necessarily apply without having some other understanding. In other words, if you're renting it out on short-term rental, STR, or like an Airbnb, you have different rules that you have to follow than if you treat it like a normal rental. That's like a 6 month or a 12 month. And so how to rent it is as important as what you're renting. So what we do for, let's say your client is Alan, and you tell me, hey, Alan wants to buy this house and he wants to do an ADU. What tax benefits? I can tell you to the dollar, plus or minus $100, I can tell you to the dollar how much tax savings Alan's going to get in year
Yes.
1 through 5. And I can tell you to the dollar what the segregation study and the tax attribute study that we do with that and how that's going to apply on his tax return, and then how we can harvest those tax attributes so that he has the best of both worlds. And more importantly, and this is a tax trap that most people don't pay attention to, when you sell a depreciable asset down the road and you dispose of that asset, generally you have to recapture that depreciation because that's the tax benefit rule. Whatever IRS giveth, they taketh away. However, if you do a couple of things a little bit different in that study that we do, a good part of that recapture won't be subject to recapture. And here's the problem with depreciation recapture. You claim $500,000 of depreciation. Now you got to recapture that, and it gets taxed at your ordinary income tax level at the time that you report it. And
Oh,
that's a shock because now that $500,000 is going to cost you $275,000 in extra tax because that gets added to your gain. And
right.
you have to recognize that as taxable income at your ordinary rate. So we have a strategy that we use with the study that we get from the engineers, and we employed that study so that we can maximize the tax attributes so that you don't have to basically recapture as much
Yes.
depreciation. That generally will cut that tax bill in half on a disposition.
Yes.
So, on a practical level, if Alan is going to buy a house, and should he call you guys before he buys or have the study run after he bought it?
It's always, always, always better to do it before you even write the offer. I would suggest you and your client, let's go have a cup of tea. Let's sit down and have a conversation. You give me the listing, you give me some information. I have the client sign a tax authorization so I can talk to you about the tax modeling part of it. And then I will run that analysis all three different ways, and I will come back and I will show you and the client what the results of that would be. And I'm going to tell you, we just did this on a deal, and Susan, my wife, and I did it on one of our deals. And we were able, it gave us tremendous negotiating leverage when we were able to understand what we had. It allowed us to do something that most buyers don't even realize because we had that information.
What was
So
the what negotiating leverage did you get from that?
well, we were able to do an all cash deal and change the deal to an all cash, and we were the third highest offer, and they took our offer because we understood what they had, and because of the recapture and some of the other factors, we were able to help them navigate around that. That saved them basically $40,000 in tax. It
Wow.
gave us the chance to be able to get the price third lowest price or third highest price down. And we then said, we're not even going to ask for an inspection. We'll take it as is. We'll sign a waiver and we'll close escrow in 21 days. And we were done.
Wow.
And we were done.
Wow.
We flipped that property 18 months later. We bought it for 560. We sold it for 1,250,000. And they basically decided that we went to the city to see if we could build two more duplexes on it. The city said no, we'll let you put 14 units on it. So we sold it to a developer.
Very nice. I love that. So if my clients want to call you, what's the cost of doing this analysis? Is it per property? How does this work?
That's a great question. The first, we have them sign an engagement. That's what we call a $0 engagement. That means they're not going to pay $1. It's zero. That gets them the first 15 hours that we're going to invest. And if it's two properties or three properties, 15 hours, basically, we can do about three properties where it's not going to cost them anything. Okay. We do that in the hopes that when they're ready to do the deal on any one of those properties or another property, that they will hire us to do that part, and we will give them the referral to our segregation engineering company, who is competitively priced. We don't get a referral fee. We just ask them to give us a referral fee by lowering the price of what you would give the referral fee and take care of the client, and they'll do that. And they can do that anywhere in the country. The average cost segregation study that's going to have those elements where you want to do it for like an ADU or an improvement or things like that, I'm gonna give you a range. It's between $1,800 and it could be as much as $4,000. The difference is that it's usually about 10 to 15x in tax savings, whatever you're going to pay for it.
Yeah.
Our part of that, irregardless of what the study costs, our part of that is basically a block of time. And so we have three different blocks of time. We have a 10, a 20, and a 30-hour block of time. If you're going to buy a 4 unit or a 5 unit property like we have over on Mohawk, you need a 30-hour block of time. If you're going to buy a house where you're going to have one or more ADUs, or you're going to buy a duplex and put an ADU, anything with a single family with one or two ADUs, that's about a 20-hour block of time. And then for a single family, a single duplex, or any combination with one ADU, that's generally a 10-hour block of time. But that study actually also goes hand in hand with valuation. You give that to your appraiser, I'm going to tell you it's going to make a difference on the kind of loan that you get and how much loan you can get. It
Mhm.
does move the needle in favor of the client a lot.
For my folks, you guys have long said that ADUs are the new tax shelter. What are some of the things people should be considering as a tax benefit of ADUs that could really save them real money? I don't mean 20 bucks a month. I mean like real money.
I would be looking at a nail it first and scale it second. You can't scale it till you nail it. Get a method down that works for you, and then expand that out and go do it again, and then expand that out and do it again. What I would suggest is we set up a management conduit corporation. The husband and the wife, let's say, own all of the stock 50-50. The corporation becomes a managing member
So like
of
an
a,
LLC.
yeah, multi-member LLC. That creates a partnership between the husband, the wife, and the corporation as partners. The LLC owns the real estate. Now, all of the money that flows up in rents to the LLC flows up to the corporation. That corporation is in charge of managing, so the partnership never has any taxable income. Okay. Then the corporation puts together some attributes: accountable reimbursement plan, medical expense reimbursement plan, home office, car allowance. I mean, I got a shopping list of goodies that I can bundle where your corporation won't ever have any taxable income if you set this up right. And whatever you do have in taxable income, we can shelter in a defined benefit plan. And you can do that all by October 15th when you file your extension, and you don't have to fund it until next year.
So how much, realistically, how much would a $300,000 ADU potentially save an average property owner
Over the first 5 years, about 175 to $250,000
total?
Yes.
total.
Wow,
Yeah.
incredible.
It's incredible because the taxes have been incentivized to pay for the development. It is really the way the tax structure is supposed to work.